Welcome, everybody. I'm Taylor Sharp, and this is the FileMaker Pro User Group Dallas chapter. We're glad to have everybody here. Today is Friday, September 6, 2024, and we're ready to kick things off. Good to see everybody here in person, as well as all of you who've joined us virtually. So we're ready to get things going. So, announcements. Next month is going to be the Pause on Error conference. Anybody in the group going? I'm going. Anyway, maybe one or two of you will be there. Hope to see you if you're there. It should be a lot of fun. It's an unconference is how it's described, and it's in Georgia. And we're going to do a week of FileMakering to see what all's out there. But speaking of big conferences, Claris has announced that in March sometime we're going to have the next big annual developers conference called Engage. And you can sign up to be on the list to be the first to register. Of course, why do you sign up on a list when you can't register? But anyway, there is a list to sign up on to be the first to get to register, and I don't know the purpose of that. But anyway, you can't register yet, but you can get on that list to be notified, I guess. Anyway, I do know that they're going to give early bird discount, so you might want to sign up on that early if you want to make sure you want to get the early bird discount. I think it saved you $100 last year or something. So, however, right now, what they have announced is this is the time that they're seeking presentations. So I think you have until mid this month or the 18th or something like that. If you would like to give a presentation at Engage, the developers conference, you can submit that to Claris, and they will spend the next month or two ferreting out which ones they want to have at their conference, and maybe you'll get to be honored to be chosen to do it. So anyway, it is certainly a deal where they get a lot more offers of presentations than they're able to put into the meeting. So a lot of them will not be accepted, but certainly you can put in multiple suggestions or topics too. Sometimes it's hard to figure out which topics they're looking for because what they want, they don't really tell you, and you find out by if they choose you or not. So anyway, get those submissions in if you're able to do it. It does require you to do, I think, a 2 or 3 minute video of yourself to basically show that you know how to talk in front of people, or at least in front of a camera, I guess. Anyway, so go for it. I encourage you guys to do that. Okay, as far as user group announcements, the next month we are going to have something like an all things accounting, or we're going to be accounting as our topic. So if you want to talk FileMaker and accounting modules and the hoops and the whatnots on it, that is going to be next month. Get the word out that we will do all things accounting. So. And after that, I think we're open, so we may be looking for some presenters soon. If you have a topic that you're particularly interested in, get with either myself, Fred, or Greg Price. We're the chapter coordinators, and we are certainly seeking out good presentations. So.
Happy September, everybody. Cooler weather, rain. It's almost not Texas. And back to school, which means everybody who has kids back to school is getting sick right now. So sorry about that, but it'll pass soon. So we've had some tech updates, always trying to make this better and give ourselves headaches in the process, looking at the frowns on Christopher's face over there. We have updated our capture card to 4K, so we're hoping for better resolution in the audience here today and better recording. We've been talking lately at Harmonic about the Claris community in North Texas, and FMPug is a big part of that. And we're really interested in seeing what we can do to promote that. So open-ended question, and I think, you know, these monthly FMPug sessions are a great component to that. We want to keep doing those, and we'd love to have more of you come and speak, show us what you're doing, show us what's interesting, talk about what your successes and challenges are. And what else can we add to that? So we'd really love to hear from you, those of you who are in the Claris community, especially in the North Texas area, or interested in the North Texas area. Maybe you're a North Texas expat, like Dennis Burnham, right? So yeah, what are you interested in? Let us know. And speaking of things Texan, today we're having barbecue for lunch for those of you in person, and we are going to be hosting that in our suite again. So just walk across the hallway and upstairs to suite 200.
Again, I'm Taylor Sharp. Most importantly, it's this time of year that I've got my Longhorn shirt on, and we're ready for our number 3 Longhorns to get the season rocking and rolling. So anyway, hopefully you guys are all cheering on your football teams and whatever out there too. Today, we're going to be talking about LetsEncrypt. First of all, if we're going to talk about LetsEncrypt, we got to start back with the real basics. So domains. Everybody should hopefully be familiar with what domains are. Google.com, whitehouse.gov, whatever, yahoo.com, all those wonderful things out there. And really, the internet works on numbers. And we had the IPv4, which is the 4 sets, and then the numbers, and then the IPv6, which is longer now. But anyway, the behind the scenes are all numbers. But us people, we think more in names, and hence what came around is having domains that are going to translate those names into IPs to actually talk to the servers. So interestingly enough, really, this whole domain thing is really about building a database for translating these domain names into IPs to say which server you're going to be talking to. So if you didn't know already, domains, unlike our language, are not read left to right, they're read right to left. So the top level domain is going to be like .com, .org, .gov, .uk. And so there is an authority that uses that, is responsible for those. And then you can buy things to the left of it. And if you buy something to the left of it, say we've got .com, Heather could go to the .com people and buy heather.com, and the Heather would have to go to the left of it. But once Heather buys heather.com, Heather literally owns everything to the left of Heather. So whatever domain section you own and control everything to the left of it. You do not control things to the right of it, but to the right of it, you need to trust those people, and we're going to get into trust and those kind of things that are to the right. So to the right, you trust, to the left, you own. So anyway, once you have a domain, you can make as many subdomains as you want. If you have a domain that can be used for a whole bunch of different domains, it's called a wildcard domain versus just a specific domain that's just for example, mine is tailormadeservices.com. That is that. If I bought the wildcard of that, I could that could be used for everything to the left of it. But anyway, all of this is managed by ICANN, which is Internet Corporation of Names and Numbers, something like that. Anyway, they're the big organization that officially controls all these things that you in essence have to trust, and everything works from there. DNS is the database that is doing this translations of names to IPs, and it's actually very basic, and actually the DNS entries are all just ASCII text, and it's nothing. It's really not encrypted or anything like that. But it's telling how things should route through the network. Okay, so now we're going to talk about SSL certificates. Okay, so first of all, if you connect to a server over port 80, you're just making a regular unencrypted call that basically is the same thing as like reading a text file. You know, you're just reading the text just as it is, ASCII, whatever. Of course, it's called HTML, so that it'll render in a browser, but nothing is verified, nothing is encrypted. It's just text, and you know, that can be very useful, particularly for things that don't need to be encrypted. There are certain things out there, websites that you want to be public, and nothing in that website is going to be private, and so that's fine. However, quickly as we started doing things on the internet where we do need some privacy, we needed to figure out a way to encrypt and determine trusts and other things in it. And it's a way to say we're going to encrypt, and when you're encrypting, it's not all exactly the same cipher. So part of this encryption process is an agreement between two machines, what cipher we're going to use and what type of trusts they're going to be there. One of the questions is, what do you mean by trust? Well, these certificates literally are just made up by someone. I can make up a certificate right now. It'd be a self-signed certificate. It's not trusted by anybody. If you happen to know me and trust me, then you could say it's a trusted certificate because you happen to know me. But someone out on the internet who doesn't know me isn't going to be able to do that. So basically what we had to create were these trust authorities or root certificates out there. And for all this, root authority that's out there, that you think that there's all kinds of things out there, they're really only about, at the most, maybe about 250 of these roots out there, only representing about probably about 150 companies. So if you go out and these certificates that are trusting are important to the operating system. Your operating system is not going to work without the trust. So interestingly, Windows has the most trusted roots, about 250. The Mac OS only has about 150. The operating system uses these roots to certificates to determine if they're going to trust it for network stuff, and browsers do too. Some applications do, but the main things are operating systems and browsers. So it's important to, if you're going to do something, for you to be trusted, you have to somehow connect to a root that is trusted, and that way other people will be able to see if you're going to a web that's encrypted page, SSL page, that you're actually encrypted. Now, just a couple of comments. You'll see this little table down here at the bottom here. This is as of last month. I want to tell you the SSL trust authorities out there that are issuing certificates. This has changed an awful lot in the last, 7-8 years or whatever. In fact, actually, one of the largest ones no longer is around. Remember Symantec? Symantec decided that they would just verify with these emails, and that was good enough. Well, ICANN, and in particular Google, decided that wasn't good enough. And so before about 2016 or something, they had like 30% of the market. Anybody heard of a Symantec certificate in the last decade? Well, they got untrusted, and once you're untrusted, everything to the left of you went away, and you died. So that company does not do certificates anymore. They got wiped out by not trusting. So how do you trust? And that's going to be something that we're going to have to tackle here through our topic of today. But just to let you know, if you don't know what LetsEncrypt is, I will have you notice, because it's because it's not a corporation, it's not blasted out there. For example, you've probably heard of GoDaddy because they advertise everywhere, but you'll notice they're at the bottom of the list. And at the top of the list is LetsEncrypt, who's a nonprofit and does not, advertise, but you notice the percentages right there. It's amazing how many certificates are now being issued by this quiet little nonprofit compared to these others. So anyway, times are a-changing. But by the way, if you're in FileMaker and you're installing a certificate, if you come over and we have the certificates here, this is apparently this is a GoDaddy one, but if you want to import one, okay, this is where you have to import the certificate from the certificate authority. So at the top, this is the signed certificate. So you're going to go to a certificate authority. You would go to their webpage and they would say, I will sell you this SSL certificate. Give me your credit card number. Then you pay for the certificate and then they send you this certificate back. Okay, well, that certificate by itself won't get you anywhere. So you then have to, of course, connect that to the private key, and this is the private key that FileMaker created that you use when you made your server request to create the original certificate that came back from GoDaddy. So you have to provide the private key that you started with. You start with a private key, the certificate request that you got in the FileMaker server. You send it out to your SSL authority. You get the cert back. And you're good to go. So all you have to do is put this in here, hit, if you have a password, put it in and hit import. And guess what? It kind of works. You actually get encryption, but the magic that makes things work is this last thing down here called the intermediate certificate file. Okay, this is something that every certificate authority has that basically ties your certificate from them back to a root authority. So if you don't put this in, if you've ever installed these, what you get is like, it's not the red lock, but it's the orange lock. And basically it says, well, we're encrypting, but we're not trusting. So even if you paid for a certificate, if you don't put the intermediate file in, then it doesn't know how to connect that certificate back to the root authorities, and basically you have failed. So now when you go to each of these different certificate authorities, there are different ways they get it. When I get it from GoDaddy, I do a download from the web page and it's included in the download. Others, you download the cert file, but you have to separately download somewhere else on their web page the intermediate file, or they may email it to you. Some of them will email it. So all these certificate authorities do it differently, but one way or another, once you get your cert file, don't think you're done. Immediately start looking for that intermediate certificate file, because it ain't going to work unless you throw that in there. So that's all important for the trust end of things. Probably about 8 years ago, I was using a Synology NAS. Anybody heard of Synology? Okay. It's network attached solution. It's a way to, basically I was pushing my FileMaker backups there for a bunch of customers, so I needed a bunch of storage. It was great. Synology figured out real quickly that, well, sometimes people want to do more than just backups, and they've had this little equivalent to FileMaker admin console. They call it the DSM, but anyway, and it started adding all these other features like web pages, or you can do Apache, you can do Nginx or whatever you want to call it. You can do Tomcat, you can do all kinds of other little things that Synology does. But one of the things that, obviously when you start, they do email services and stuff too. But one of the things that eventually comes along is, well, if you're going to do web hosting, well, you want to be able to do SSL certificates. And of course, everybody's been paying lots of money for these SSL certificates. My deal is, I had this Synology, and along came this little LetsEncrypt, and this is how I got introduced to LetsEncrypt, is they have this little wizard you go through, and you can install an SSL certificate. And then I thought, okay, I go through this little wizard, I put my domain name, I put my email in, and it doesn't ask for any money. Ooh, nice. How's this working? Then I thought maybe I paid for it as part of my license with Synology or something. So I started looking around on it, and this got me to the, what is LetsEncrypt? I'm like, suddenly I didn't have to pay for anything. I've got it. So who are these guys? So they're a nonprofit SSL certificate authority. They're technically owned by this Internet Security Research Group, which is founded by a bunch of names you'd probably recognize, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Mozilla Foundation, University of Michigan, Akamai Technologies, and Cisco Systems. And so it was a group that started back in 2012, but they didn't really go live with what they were doing until 2015. Basically, in 2015 is when they got tied to a root authority and it actually would work. So before that, it was all theory, so until you get a root authority to approve you, then you're nowhere other than in theory. But it was, you had to start the white paper somewhere, so they did that. But I love the mission. I always look at the nonprofit missions. Missions is to create a more secure and privacy-respecting World Wide Web by promoting the widespread adoption of HTTPS. So HTTPS is the secure connections that we're doing at SSL, and their goal is to always be free. So their problem is, how do you get more adoption? Well, you tend to get a lot more adoption if it's free. So anyway, one thing that is interesting, though, is their certificates are only good for 90 days. So these, and that's part of their security thing is to, we're going to give them away, but they won't last long. And that way, if yours is a problem, we might not renew you. But, even if you get one, you can't buy like a 10-year one or something that, would be under their authority for a long time. And of course, one of the questions is, if it's a 90-day renewal, sometimes I like having long ones that I don't have to renew for a long time. That kind of seemed to be a downer. But I then realized Synology was automatically renewing those for me, and I didn't have to do anything. So that got me good and excited. So I started getting on the FileMaker community forums, and I started making all kinds of posts about this because I thought, boy, wouldn't it be nice if the FileMaker admin console did the same thing, and it was a nice little wizard that we have like in the DSM of Synology. Boy, that would just, because, you'd hear things from, Rick Kalman and Robert Holsley and stuff like that how important it is to have, good security, follow the security guidelines, have an SSL and stuff like that. And this was where I kept pounding on them. Well, if you really want all your FileMaker servers to have it on it, use this free stuff that's out there. We already know, we've got plenty of examples where it's being done free elsewhere. I learned it from Synology, but there are a whole lot of other places it's being done the same way. Why are they not? So I had been banging on Claris and FileMaker for a long time about this. And there were a bunch of naysayers in the beginning. And I will say one of the original problems was because it is free, it did attract a lot of unscrupulous type places out there. And so some things were changed about how they approved or rejected certain types of domains. So LetsEncrypt on FileMaker. This is kind of a little bit about, what does it require to do it? Well, first of all, it came out in FileMaker 21, so if you're not on FileMaker 21, you can't do it. It is initially available on Mac OS and Ubuntu Linux, not on Windows. Okay, there's a reason why for now. Don't worry, they're working on a PowerShell script thing for it. I imagine the next version update, it'll do it. So it's there. The development team guys are working on a solution for that. So if you're on the Windows world, don't sweat it yet. But it's not supported yet in the Windows world. So anyway, the main reason why it's only available on the Mac and Linux is because it's a script that does this, and the script is basically the same script on both of them because they're both versions of Unix, Linux, whatever. And so that way they have one script that can be used by certbot to do this. Now, this is how they're doing it. They're using Homebrew or Snap, depending on what you're on, to install this automation and certbot to connect with and do the updates. And we kind of have to muddle through all of that right now in the current configuration of FileMaker. it is not elegant like it is in Synology. And so this is one of the things where I am so glad that Claris is doing Let's Encrypt, yay, but it can still be done a whole lot easier. So I'm still going to keep pushing that, we use these other examples, because you make it so that, my mom can do it, then everybody will do it. So I'm simple is easy. We're not quite there yet. The part of the trust stuff. So part of the things was, how do you prove trust to someone you don't really know and maybe halfway around the world or something? And so a couple of, there were, the original methods, done with the root authorities is mailing in your government ID and a company letterhead and crap like that. Well, that wasn't going to work. So they had to figure out an automated way to do it. Originally, a bunch of them were just doing it with email, and that's what Symantec was doing, and that quickly got nixed as not appropriate. So ask how well email did for Symantec, and not so good. However, the email method is not totally gone. They do have some already predetermined emails for a domain. If you can get an email from that, you can prove that you own that particular domain. And one of them is admin at whatever your domain is. They've got, I think, 2 other ones, but they're only like 3. And if you don't have one of those emails, you can't do email validation to prove that you own the domain. So the next option is probably the most complicated way to do it if you don't know DNS. If you do know DNS, it's not very hard, but you can add a text record to your DNS to prove that you own it. They tell you what to put in there, you put it in there, they read the DNS record and they say, oh yes, you must own it because you knew what to put in there, and supposedly only you could control your DNS records. So yeah, that's probably the most secure way to do it, but not how I'm gonna ever do it. I'm gonna show you the way I do it with my clients. Most of my clients, while they should have a DNS server on their local area network, most don't. So I'm just being practical about it. So the last option is really the easy option. And this is where they give you a file or even just the name of a folder or something that you can put on your server. And they tell you, like, just put a number, put a file with this name on it, and they will try to read your web server. And if it shows up, then they'll say, good, you must own, that web page because we told you what to put there. You put it there. We read it. Oh, well, then we've done the circle of trust. Okay. So now, why would you want to do that over the DNS? Well, guess what? Every FileMaker server that gets installed has a web server installed. So if you're on Mac, you got Apache. If you're on Ubuntu, you got NGX. If you Nginx, and then if you got Windows, you got IIS. So you always have a web server. Now, a lot of people don't really make use of their web servers. A lot of people don't even know about it unless they try to do something like WebDirect. But I love having a web server on my Mac, a FileMaker server, because I use it for a lot of things that I need locally called. For example, if you just needed some files that you wanted to make available to people publicly. Now remember, if it's on that web server, it's available to the public, it's great. But for example, company logos on a FileMaker file, one of the fastest ways to do it, instead of reading globals or a record or something anywhere else, or just putting the same logo everywhere over throughout all the layouts, is I like to have a web browser is where the logos go in. And if you use a web viewer on your FileMaker layout, you just point it to the logo, and you put the logo in this web server that FileMaker has. So you just go into your FileMaker server under your HTTC docs and you throw the company logo in there. And that way I can now anywhere put in the web viewer that company logo. Likewise, if I ever wanted to change the logo, I just change that file, keep the same name obviously. Presto, has changed everywhere in my FileMaker server. Now, Granted, you could do that with global files, but I like doing it in web viewers because web viewers spin off a different thread, which tends to affect less speed performances. Anyway, it's just a little bit of an optimization thing. But there tend to be, I run into company things where they often want other things out there they want everybody have access to but aren't secure like that, and I'll just throw them on there. For example, I do a lot of Google Maps. Well, guess what? Google Maps works great, but you have to tell what icons you want. And you can't use the icons over on the Google. They won't let you point there. So I just throw all my icons in a folder on the FileMaker server, and then I can, I've got them all right there for when I'm doing my mapping on, in a web viewer for FileMaker. So that is very useful because I have a lot of clients that want to say, throw me a map up here that shows all of my store locations or all of my customers or whatever. And that way I've got all the icons, and I'll show you where that goes over here. So if we're over here, this is a FileMaker server. And if you'll go to the FileMaker folder in either programs or your library if you're a Mac, you'll see that they have the HTTC server here, and then you'll have HTTC docs, and this is where everything that shows up in there is. So, for example, has anybody ever seen something like this? Okay. Where do you think that logo came from? It's just this little PNG file that's sitting right here. Okay, what if you wanted to, here's your little FileMaker database server. It's let's see. Here, we'll open it with something safe like BBEdit. Okay, here we go. So in this case here, I'll just say Matt's FileMaker. Okay, we've made that change in the next. I'm going to drag this back into this same folder. I'm going to replace it there. And guess what? If we come back here, now it's not refreshing. What did I do? Oh, that was in the title. I needed to come down here. I'm sorry. So now I've replaced that index file. So if I come back here to this same server, well, let me hit refresh. But that's an example. What's nice is you can then go customize it. You can make that index file be your company site or, company portal, or you can make it have links to the web direct so that someone just has to go to your domain and then you click that and it takes you to the web direct files you want. Or you can customize it however you want. It's just a web server. You can do anything you could do on some other web server. You already got that on FileMaker, so you can customize away and put whatever you want in there. Note that everything on this first level is port 80. Oh, I know what it is. I was probably doing HTTPS. Everything with the HTTPS is going to be what's on the secure HTTPS. Everything on this top one will be HTTP. And since I just moved over to HTTPS, I bet it works now. Here we go. I lied.
There you go.
There. Okay. But if you just need static web page stuff, obviously you're not going to do dynamic PHP stuff, whatever. But if you just need some static stuff, you can, that FileMaker web server is great. Now, some of the security experts will tell you is, they recommend you turn off web direct and don't have web services. And yes, technically that is true. Your biggest vulnerability is you are susceptible to, for example, a denial of service attack. But, if it's going to do that, it's probably going to take out your FileMaker anyway. So, you're always susceptible to some things. I have not run into any problem with it, and it has solved a lot of problems like my mapping icons for Google and things like that and company logos. I find plopping things in these folders is extremely useful, and I do that a lot. So, but moving on to where we were on this. So proving you own your own domain now, guess what? I've shown you how you can prove you own your own domain by, editing the index. Well, guess what? Since we have a web server, we can now prove we own a domain by putting something in these HTTC docs folders on which is your FileMaker server, web server that we already have, already comes with it. So that's the easy way to do it. Well, guess what? That's all LetsEncrypt is doing is it runs certbot to say, hey, I'm going to put this file out there, let the LetsEncrypt people verify it's there, and then once it does it, then it could actually close it out. I want it to leave it open. It actually removes the file after it verifies it, but that's all LetsEncrypt is doing is putting a quick file, in this folder that's in your htdocs to say, test it on a web browser, and if I see the file I'm expecting, then hey, we're good for another 90 days. So neat thing about that is, since I know I'm mostly working on Macs, we already got a web server. That's the easy way to do it, and I don't mind that web server being on because I use it for other things. But some security people, if you're some big corporate company, they may make you turn off the web server, and if they do, keep in mind that probably your LetsEncrypt's not going to work too. So, well, yeah, all kinds of technical problems come when you completely turn everything off. When you install FileMaker 21 and you come to the FileMaker server folder in the library, if you're on Windows, it'd be program folder, but you go to it. And we're used to, usually when I'm going there, usually going to data and then databases or the backups or something like that. But on that first level of folders, along with data and CStore and stuff like that, there's also a folder called tools. Most of us usually ignore that, don't even recognize it's there, but it actually has some cool things in it. One thing that is cool that it has is a LetsEncrypt folder. And in this LetsEncrypt folder, they've given us a couple of text files. They call them .sh for, I don't know, script something or other. Anyway, whatever. Shell script, okay. It's what's going to run when you go to terminal to run it, but you can edit as in text editor with BBEdit is what I use. And basically the only thing that you're going to do on these files is you're going to open them up and you're going to go in there, and there's a place that says sample.domain.com, and you'll change that whatever your domain is. In this case, I'm fm.tms.us, so I just put that in. And then the other thing it asks you for is your email. The nice thing, you don't have to put the email in, but you know what? The LetsEncrypt people, if you do something wrong, they'll actually email you and tell you, I think you did this wrong. It's kind of scary, They actually are keeping in touch. You can't pay for help, but they'll actually email you help. So it's kind of neat. Go LetsEncrypt. So anyway, you can edit those, and then you can also put in, the other thing is you can put in your credentials so that it automatically runs. You actually can, there's another choice that's in there on these, and one of them is prompt. If you say 1, when you go to terminal and you run the shell script, it will prompt you for your email, the domain name, and your password and stuff like that. If you go to the text file and change prompt equals 1 to prompt equals 0, then it just runs and it doesn't prompt you for it. And of course, when you want to have that running automatically, you will want to do that. But for testing purposes, you just leave the prompt equals 1 and it will prompt you for it. You can test it out and everything will kind of work. And it's kind of useful to do it. So basically, you try it to see if it works. And if you get everything works, then you change the prompt to 0. And then the next step is, okay, so we have these two scripts. One of it is to renew your certificate, and one is to request the certificate. And it's great that you can go to terminal and run those shell scripts just by typing them in. You have to change directory, go to that directory, and then type the name of it. They'll run. They're great. I hate that it's in terminal and that we haven't done this in the admin console, but maybe someday we will. But for right now, you got to go to terminal to do it. But it works. So that's good. And that's, for you manually doing it. But who wants to manually do this every 90 days? Not me. So what you want to do then is, guess what? If you're in FileMaker, and if you've ever scheduled a script on server, you're used to going and selecting your database and what script and what parameters and when you want to run it. Well, almost 99% of the time, that's what we're going to. Well, what are the other options are when you're going to schedule a script is that, let me make sure I'm using the word right. Let's see. If you select a system script, it changes the drop down below where you can choose before you're choosing databases, because normally we're choosing a database and a script to run in. If you change it to system script, one of the choices is renew LetsEncrypt certificate. And so you just select that to run, and you can have it run every so often. So you can tell it to run every 180 days, and you'll be screwed because the certificate expires after 90 days. You could run it every 90 days too, and you'd be fine, assuming there are absolutely no problems or hiccups. But that's not, that's kind of living on the edge. So I recommend doing it weekly. I've heard one person out there even said, just do it daily, at night. Now, the disadvantage of when you run it is, remember, it's like when you install a regular SSL certificate, you have to stop the server and start it. That means closing databases, which means kicking people off and then restarting it. So you could do that every day, and if assuming all your users are off at, say, 2 in the morning or something like that, you could do that then. I tend to find that I have very few customers on my databases, say, Sunday mornings. So I just say Sunday morning's a good time to run the schedule. It runs those 2 shell scripts for you automatically. Now, keep in mind, they can fail. For example, if something is record locked somewhere that it can't, it gets stuck on, or it's not able to close a database in time. So sometimes it fails. But if you're running it every week, if it fails, once every 5 or 6 or 10 times or something, you don't care, because as long as it's doing it every week, you just have to get to the 90 days for it restarting and you're good. So, but that's really up to you how often you want to start it. You could actually just say, don't start it, just get me the certificate and I will manually restart it every 80 days or whatever to make sure I'm doing it. So some places have scheduled maintenances that say you have to restart servers once a month anyway. You could just make it part of your manual then, and you could just run this and just tell it not to restart the server. So those are your options also. But anyway, that's LetsEncrypt. I encourage you to give it a try particularly on a development server before you do it on your regular one. But it's there. The price is right. Worst comes to worst, you can always jump back to your other certificate. But it's seems pretty easy and seems to be working. They just need to make it easier. But I'm happy to see, for anybody who ever griped about, oh well, I have to pay for it. That excuse is now gone. Go for it. If those of you in the Windows world, should be coming soon. Questions from the audience? Anybody I have not put to sleep yet?
No,
Matt?
thought about, you had mentioned, the red lock, the orange lock, the green lock. It's getting to a point now with browsers where certain browsers, I think the newest version of Edge, just simply aren't going to let you go to an unencrypted page anymore, right? It used to say, click here to accept the risk and continue. That's just not an option with a lot of browsers. I'm wondering if FileMaker's headed in that direction with their client. Like, you cannot red lock connect to this anymore.
Well, within the FileMaker app? Or?
Within the FileMaker app.
Well,
any thought? Like, have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything along those lines. I do know that the FileMaker server does talk to Claris. Among other things, they can shut your license down. And for that reason, this was a problem I had that I probably would have kept me from being able to continue to use it back in the days when I used to work for the federal government. But things that were calling out,
right.
The government doesn't let you touch stuff out. So I don't know if they've got some option for government purchases, but there's some times where keeping things locked in a secure area that's its own local area network that doesn't use any of those things other than its own little DNS and issued certificates, that some of these things won't work. And I think if they lock that down, those might not work, and it would cause some heartache at some of the really secure places.
Yeah, so I think I was going along the thought about the green lock versus the yellow lock, because I know that on the website, when you have, like, the website has the necessary certificate, but it's drawing some content that's not that does not have the SSL certificate. For example, so like you have a website, but you're loading like images from HTTP instead of HTTPS. It will still show. We actually change that to that green lock, or change that the color. I think that's when it changes to yellow. So is that like something that will have to be of a concern in FileMaker also, or it's nothing that people should be worried about?
Saying, because browsers are making it scary not to go to an HTTPS page. Well, what if FileMaker made every time you logged in, it gave you that warning, or maybe if it didn't let you at all, if it wasn't set up right. I mean, so I mean, it could be that, you know, FileMaker could, instead of having just a green lock, it starts giving, or red lock, it starts giving bigger, uglier warnings and scaring people more, you know, and that would be something I would typically see of them escalating up ways of discouraging that. But I would like them, instead of doing those kind of things, to, you know, just solve the problem, make it easy and make it automated.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we will see. They don't listen to me much on things, but I'm the squeaky wheel occasionally. So, any other encryption things out there? Best practices?
You might just mention that, you know, we move servers with LetsEncrypt on it, you know, and as long as the domain stays the same, it works at the new location without any configuration.
With a new IP.
Yeah.
But that also is assumed you've gone to the DNS and updated.
You
Right.
had gone to the DNS.
But assume you, right. Yes, so anyway,
But as long as you've got the same domain,
you didn't have to redo
didn't
the
have to
LetsEncrypt.
do anything. You know, it was like, oh, this is wonderful.
That's the way it should be.
All right, thank you all for joining us from afar. We are going to go have some barbecue. Please join us next time. We're going to have even more technical acumen to accelerate. Have a great one.